Good morning, students. I thought of recording the paper discussion, theory paper discussion here, so that every one of you can go through it leisurely, because we were not able to meet properly, like everyone of us. So I would strongly recommend you to go through the video, pause it, go through question by question, and check your answer. If you haven't answered the paper, I have shared that paper earlier. I think most of you haven't done that. If you haven't done the paper, make sure that you do it first, and then go through the video and correct your answers. Right? Don't just look at the video first and then do the paper. That's not going to do any purpose, right? Okay. So you can see here in this paper, of course, we are testing from unit 1 to, the first chapter to the first 3 pages of impact of internet. So if you take the first question, above is a printer which combines the functionality of multiple devices. State the name given for this type of devices. See, here you have to be really specific to get the mark. So what you should train yourself to is writing specific answers to get full marks. Okay, so we were expecting multifunctional device, right? It's already, it says it's a printer, so you can't just say printer or multifunctional printer. It's a multifunctional device. State 2 other functions of the above multifunction device. Well, photocopying, scanning, faxing, yeah, right. It's a printer. So photocopy, scan, printing, faxing. Okay. So remember, these devices, these multifunctional devices, they have their primary function. Therefore, this device is an output device because its primary function is printing. Multifunction printer has a built-in flash memory. Flash memory is a type of, the answer is EPROM, erasable programmable read-only memory. More precisely, it is double EPROM, electrical erasable programmable read-only memory, and it's also called the flash memory. Multifunctional printers can be connected to network. State 1 wired and wireless method of connecting. Wired method would be Ethernet, or you can say Cat high cable, right? They're saying it's connected to the network, so even USB cable is fine because you connect it to the system unit, and the system, that machine is connected to the rest of the network. Or else, if it is an IP printer, you can directly connect into the network, not through a computer but directly to the network. Right, but remember, not just USB, it has to be USB cable, right? Wireless method would be Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi direct. Nowadays, photocopiers and multifunction printers can be called converged devices. You know, convergence is devices advancing in technology. While advancing, what they do is they adapt technologies of other devices, and ultimately it's very hard to draw a line to differentiate these devices because they almost have the same functionality, same features. But in this question, first you need to say what convergence is and then relate it to photocopy and multifunction. Explain type questions are really tricky. Okay, so modern photocopiers, they have the printing function, right? Direct printing function. You don't need to scan it and print, but you can plug the pen drive and print straight away. Modern photocopiers, they have the wireless connectivity, Wi-Fi direct, Bluetooth, and so on. Multifunction printers, they have the photocopiers function, photocopying, scanning, right? So the photocopiers function is there in multifunction printer. Multifunction printers function, like printing, is there in photocopy. So these two devices are examples of converged devices, right? Which one of these digital communication methods found on a smartphone is related to WAN, wide area network? So it's not Bluetooth. Bluetooth is personal area network. wireless personal area network. Wi-Fi is wireless LAN. IR is also personal area network. It's 5G. Data communication is affected by latency. State the unit used to measure the latency. Latency is the time taken to send data packets from one point to another and get a feedback, and it is measured in milliseconds. Speed of the network is limited by its slowest part. Briefly explain this with an example. Actually, this is a draft paper. We slightly changed this statement. What it means is actually taken from the book. Speed of the network is limited by its slowest part. That means now in our LAN we can have a certain speed, right? If it is 100 Mbps, yeah, we can get maximum 100 Mbps, right? But if we have an internet speed which is like faster than the maximum bandwidth of our network, we still get the speed of, we still get the internet at the speed of the network. If the network can support only 100 Mbps, and if our internet speed 100 Mbps, we still get 100 Mbps internet, because the network can support only that amount. Right. The theory related to this section, this point actually, this speed of network is limited by its slowest part, is on page 84. Page 84, right? It says the speed of network is limited by its slowest part. For example, if a network uses 10 gigabits of gigabit per second cables, and its internet connection speed is 100 Mbps, then the internet connection is the slowest part of the network, right? So although the network cables are capable of transferring at 10 gig, if the internet speed is 100 Mbps, that is the slowest speed that you are going to get in that network, right? Just having 10 gigabits per second network will not enhance the internet speed. That's what it means, right? But in the real paper, final paper, we actually changed this to another, right? Yeah. 3D printers are becoming very popular. Identify 3 applications of 3D printing. Well, here we are looking at the applications where they are used. They can be used for making prototypes, models, right? Ornaments. Then what else? Even food printing is there. Some wrote buildings. Yes, I have seen in a video where they make a small building, house. It's a huge 3D printer, and vehicle parts and so on, and artificial limbs, right? Despite its uses, 3D printing can also impact negatively on the environment. I identified 2 examples of negative impact. Well, the plastic we use for 3D printing can pollute the environment. Then it uses a lot of produces. It uses a lot of heat, and it uses a lot of energy, electricity. So electricity consumption is high, right? Right. An interface is used to create a method of interaction for the user. State 4 types of user interfaces. Well, GUI, command driven, and menu driven. And apart from that, the 4th one can be something like gesture interface, voice interface, and even tactile interface or touch interface, right? Collectively, if you take touch interface, gesture interface, and voice interface, since you don't need any prior experience to use these interfaces, and they enhance the accessibility for the people, collectively we call it NUI, natural user interface, right? Examples are voice interface, gesture interface, and tactile interface, right? Operating systems provide user interface to interact with the hardware. Give two examples where we interact with the hardware using the interface of operating system. So basically here we were looking at how we can access the hardware, how we can communicate with the hardware through the operating system. So one example is you insert a CD and access the content of the CD. You transfer or backup files into a pen drive. You plug the pen drive and backup files, right? And you send a print job to the printer, or you check the print queue in the printer, or you clean the nozzle of the printer through the operating system using the printer driver. So any example which relates to the hardware, right? State 3 functions of an operating system other than providing a user interface. Well, there are plenty of functions. It provides security, then error handling, job control like print queue management, input-output control, memory management, file management, resource management, allocating CPU time and main memory to different processes. All these are examples, right? Multitasking. Explain the purpose of utility software in a computer. Utility, as the name suggests, like utility is supportive, right? So these are the supportive software that helps someone. Right? Who is this someone? It helps the operating system, right? Utility software helps the operating system in managing and controlling the hardware. Okay, so example, you can write an example here. Disk defragmenter, right? Kamal decides to remove the open source operating system in his laptop and install the proprietary operating system. Now, proprietary means an owned software. It's owned by a company, whereas open source is free, right? And it's meant for sharing, and everyone contributes to the development of the open source software. Briefly explain the possible reason for this. So why would he move to proprietary software? One thing is it's done by a company, right? A recognized company, so there's accountability. So if something goes wrong, you can get customer support, proper customer support, and even compensation, right? And the other thing is proprietary software is tested thoroughly before putting it out, because otherwise it affects the company name. So it tends to have less errors and more reliability compared to the open source software, right? Even after switching to a different operating system, Kamal will have to keep updating the software. State 2 advises updating software. Well, updating and upgrading are two different terms. Updating usually involves fixing bugs, adding small features, and but there's no major change, right? Updating mainly it fixes bugs and security issues. At the same time, it enhances up to some extent, right? But upgrading involves a major change. For example, a version upgrade. Briefly discuss the importance of using flash memory in a computer system with examples. Well, flash memory is a ROM type memory, or you can say EPROM, which is you can read and write both, and it doesn't use moving parts. Therefore, it can withstand shocks and drops, and it's more durable, and more than everything, it's fast. It provides fast data writing and access speeds, right? It's solid state. Networks allow users to share resources and communicate by sending data packets through communication links. State 2 types of wired networks. Well, you can write LAN, WAN, MAN, Metropolitan Area Network, and even PAN. So if you put W in front, it becomes wireless network, right? Cat5e cables are used for Ethernet connections. Which one of these is used to measure the data transfer speeds in networks? It is gigabits per second, right? Megahertz is used to measure the speed of the bus, and RPM, the rotation of the cylinder in a magnetic hard drive. Clock cycles per second is the processor speed. John decides to set up a wireless network at his home. He will be using a wireless router. Explain how the wireless router allows his smartphone to connect to the wireless network. Here we expected you to write first that when the phone requests a connection to the wireless access point or router, the router identifies the phone using its MAC address, and then it will issue an IP address using DHCP, right, based on the availability of the IP addresses in its IP pool, and then only the phone can get the or establish the connection. And after that, the router will start tracking your phone using that IP address, right? It's a dynamic IP address that it allocates, right? So the feature is called DHCP. DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. John can limit the number of devices connecting to his wireless network so that he can allow connection only to his private devices. Briefly explain how he can do this. Now, here the main part is only to his private devices. So some students wrote password, but you know, when password is given, you share the password, you tell your friend the password, then ultimately the number of devices will grow connecting. But if you want to control specifically the device, then you have to use something called MAC filtering. So that's where in the router or the wireless access point, you add the MAC addresses of specific devices, and then you can either allow the connection or deny the connection, or you can use a whitelist or a blacklist, but it is called MAC filtering. Wireless router is a multifunctional device. State the purpose of the router in a network, right? So it's if it is a multifunctional device, there should be a primary function for it. So the primary function of the router is to send the data packets in the most efficient shortest path. It's doing the routing or routing work. State two other functions of router. Now today's router is a multifunctional device because it combines a modem, right? So modem is the part of the router which connects to the telephone link. Then it can act as a wireless access point. That's where you have the antenna and you can use it as a Wi-Fi device. That's the wireless access point feature. Then at the back of the router, you will have these Ethernet ports. So it has a built-in switch. So you can extend the internet or divide the internet into different networks even. You can connect 4 different networks if you have 4 ports there, or 4 computers, right? Client-server networks are more popular than peer-to-peer networks. State 2 advantage of client-server networks compared to peer-to-peer. Well, client-server, it's a centralized network, so it provides centralized administration, such as troubleshooting client computers from the server, running the virus update from the server, resetting the passwords. And the client server allows you to have roaming profiles, which means you can access your account from any workstation, access your files from any workstation. That's called roaming profiles. Okay. But server, of course, if you take the server, you can have a server in peer-to-peer as well. But the main thing is that it will not be centralized. Right? You can designate one computer in a peer-to-peer network as a server, right? And client-server networks can grow large, can expand easily, but not peer-to-peer, right? Then we get a home network to identify the labels. Label A is, you can see it's connecting to the internet, so it is the router. B is pointing to the straight lines, so those are Ethernet cables. And then C, you can see in C you can see that there's an antenna and wireless signals are there. So it is an access point, wireless access point, right? It can be a wireless router also, that is also acceptable. And then D is pointing to these waves, so it's asking us to identify the wave. So it can be Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but mainly since it is connecting to the Wi-Fi access point, it has to be Wi-Fi. So remember here, you need to identify the type of signal as well. Okay, type of signal as well. Briefly explain the purpose of protocols in data communication. Well, protocols are sets of rules and regulations that govern the data communication. So they're used for standardizing the data communication across multiple devices and platforms, right? Because if all these devices are made to adhere to these protocols, they will communicate without any issue. The compatibility will be there among these devices, right? So explain type questions, you have to write the feature and how it is applied, the benefit as well. Okay, because of this happens like that. So if the standards are there, compatibility will be high, right? State 2 at disadvantage of wireless networks. Well, reduced or slow data transfer speed, then less secure, less reliable, right? Okay, this one is about the encryption, which is the public key encryption. You know, in public key encryption we use two types of keys which are part of the same key, and encryption is done using the public key, right? That is the public key you share with the rest of the world. If someone wants to send a message to you, you have to share your public key with them, and then you decrypt the message using your private key. So A is public key, B is private key. Briefly describe how access rights and access permissions help to secure a network. Now, access rights such as read, write, execute, they help us to control the way users access the network. This is where you can give some examples. Some users can open the files, but they can't edit. Some people can open and edit. Some now users can access only their account, not others' account. From one lab you can't access the other lab. That is also access rights. You can't install uninstall software, but administrator can, who has all the access rights in the system. So that's how access rights help to secure the network. You can control the way the users are handling the network. IP addresses. Difference between IPv4 and IPv6. IPv4 is using 32 bits or 4 bytes, and IPv6 is using 128 bits. Why? Because it has 8 sets of hexadecimal numbers. In each hexadecimal set you have 4 digits ranging from 0 to F. F is 15, and each hexadecimal number is represented in 4 bits. So 4 into 4, 16, and you have 8 sets. 16 into 8, you have 128 bits. Uses hexadecimal number system. IPv4 is using denary number system. The correct word is denary. Even if you write decimal, it's fine, which is base 10. Brian uses electronic cards for online payments. Explain the reason why Brian should use a third-party payment process. Third-party payment process like PayPal, they will keep your credentials safe, and they have been doing that business for a long time, so you can trust them, and your credentials, your identity is not revealed to the vendor that you are dealing with when you are purchasing something online. So that's the advantage, right? It preserves your privacy, protects your privacy. State 2 methods cyber criminals can use to steal personal information of Brian when performing online transaction. Well, you can talk about phishing and farming. And when it comes to phishing and farming, remember, phishing happens through email mainly, but it can come through IM as well as SMS. Basically, it gives a link for you to follow and provide your details. Until you provide your details, you won't become a victim. Just because you open the email, you won't become a victim, right? Right? And farming happens mainly in two ways. One is the spyware, which stay in your computer, records your details and send them to unauthorized users. Secondly, when you are in the legitimate site, suddenly you will be redirected to a fake site. In both ways, you can, farming can occur, right? Okay. Which one of remember, in farming, it is not your fault actually, because like you are in the legit site and suddenly you'll be redirected, right? But in phishing, of course, it's totally your fault because you fall into the trap and provide your details. Which one of these is used by HTTPS to protect the data? It is SSL. In HTTPS, it encrypts the data that is sent from the client to the server. It uses two encryption protocols, SSL and TLS. Contactless payment methods such as NFC payments are becoming very popular. State one advantage and one disadvantage of this payment. Advantage would be it is convenient, but don't just say convenient. Why? Because you just have to tap your device and do the payment. And you can say it's secure because without a justification, you can't take the secure answer, because someone can say it's insecure as well. It's secure because it works at close proximity so that an intruder cannot come between the devices. At very close proximity, few centimeters apart, so an intruder cannot come in between. If you say it lacks security, then you have to say because there's no pass key exchange like in Bluetooth. So it has it can have threats if you don't use it properly. Like for example, once you use it, you have to switch it off, right? Even Bluetooth, same. These wireless personal area networks, you have to, the ad hoc networks, you set them up, you do the transaction, and you have to switch them off, right? Most secure transactional sites provide security features. Which of the following is not a security feature used to protect customer data? It is CAPTCHA. CAPTCHA is a verification process to verify that the data is coming from a human, not a bot, right? List 3 types of security concerns Joe would have related to online shopping. Well, this one is asking about concerns, so it can be stealing your credentials, then hacking, then what else? Phishing, right? Spamming, right? Once you register, they can spam, things like that. Security concern. This one is talking about security concern, right? Some even wrote about damaged goods. So that's not related to security concern, right? List 3 security precautions that Joe take before performing online shopping. Precautions. This time precautions. You have to check whether the site is using HTTPS, whether the site has the padlock sign. Then site is verified by third-party security verification sites like VeriSign, for example. And you can check the reviews before performing the shopping, online shopping or transaction, things like that. Things that you do before you do the transaction. Explain why CAPTCHA tests are used in online forms. Well, that is to differentiate whether the data input is coming from a human or a bot, to differentiate a human and a bot, right? No, you can't really say like it is to identify. Now, one wrote it is to identify a bot. No, it is to differentiate the bot and a human, to verify that the input is from a human. Briefly explain the purpose of reCAPTCHA. Purpose of reCAPTCHA is to enter more and more text, right? But these texts are coming from actual books, right? Old, old books which are like torn, decayed, right? So it's part of you know, it's part of reconstructing these books, and the advantage, I mean, purpose is to convert them into electronic versions, e-books of old library books, right? James keeps backup of his files in a cloud. State one advantage and one disadvantage. Storing a backup in a cloud. Advantage: you can access these files from variety of devices, from anywhere where there's internet connection. Disadvantage: there can be security issues if the account is hacked. Your personal files will be gone to wrong hands, right? Explain why it is important to take backups at regular intervals. Well, they're talking about regular intervals, right? Often. This is one important factor that you have to discuss. You have to think of when creating a backup plan. How often you are taking backups. More often you take backups, less amount of data that you're going to lose. If you take a backup today and the next backup 1 month's time, you're going to lose all the data within that 1 month. So more often you take, less loss on the data, right? State 3 things to consider when creating a backup plan. Well, there are plenty of things to consider. How often you take backups, who is responsible, what are the storage devices you are going to use, what data you are going to back up, how many copies you are going to maintain, where exactly you are going to keep them, is it automatic or manual, is it network or local, and what type of security you are going to have. Everything is considered, right? State one similarity among differential backup and incremental backup. Well, the similarity is both backup methods take the files that were changed, only the files that were changed. Then what is the difference? Difference is differential backup takes all the files that were changed since the last full backup, right? Incremental backup is taking all the files that were changed since the last full backup or the incremental backup. So refer to the illustrations I have shared before, and you will understand. In incremental backup, you get these incremental backups as separate files, separate sets of files. In differential backup, you get everything together, all the files that were changed together. Okay, so go through that illustration. I have shared those pictures, right? Okay, we come to the last question, which is the 8-mark question. Internet has impacted the way we have access to information. Discuss the positive and negative ways that internet has affected the access to information. Right. So again, this is the impact, positive and negative impact. So you have to have a balanced discussion. You can leave the first part for positive and the second part for negative, or vice versa. Positive side, you have access to real-time information. You can give examples. You can access information on variety of devices. You have access to up-to-date information, and you get alerts, right? And this helps us to stay updated. And also for students, they can get knowledge really fast, right? And you can share the information instantly. When you access these news sites, you can share them on social networks. You can reach a wider audience globally with this feature. And then you get information in variety of formats, like multimedia, right? If you take only radio, you hear. TV, of course, yes, you see the visuals, but in this one, it's a variety of sources and variety of formats. You have text, you have websites, multimedia, presentations, animations, everything there. So it conveys the information, the idea effectively. Now to the negative points, well, you can have access to wrong data, biased data, and outdated data, and misleading data. And there can be threats as well, like spamming, because most of these news sites, they will be using cookies, so they can have threats, then spamming, then inappropriate contents are being shared, and this can even lead to conflicts, because if wrong information, false information is shared, because this goes viral, if the information goes viral to a large audience, you can mention unprecedented audience, uncountable amount of audience, and can have social issues as well, effects as well, right? So remember, it has to be a balanced discussion. You have to talk about both sides. At the same time, you have to give proper examples. And I would suggest that you try this question at last. This can come in the middle even, and there can be even 2 8-mark questions. And it's better you jot down all the points that you're going to discuss before you start writing. And don't repeat the question, make use of the space. And some students, what they do is they write in the margin, and then sometimes they ask for more papers. No need, not at all needed, right? Because this given space is more than enough for you to write a proper answer. That's what you should practice. Okay, so hope you understood the discussion. And I remember, first you answer your paper, and then you follow the discussion, and do your own self-analysis. Okay, so good luck, and I'll come back with the practical paper discussion. I think I haven't shared the practical paper. First I will share, or maybe online we can discuss the paper real time. We can do it. Anyway, stay tuned for the messages on the post, right? Okay, cheers, bye, see you.